Okay, so let's go ahead and start with some introductions. So my name is Dr. Anna Chicas-Mosier. I am going to be moderating this session, and I am a postdoctoral fellow at Auburn University in entomology. So we will go through our panelists. If we have enough students join, we'll break out into breakout rooms, but otherwise we'll kind of stay in a panel and just have a good conversation. So if Glorianne, if you want to start with an introduction.
Hello, my name is Glorianne Dorsey. I am a graduate student at the University of New Mexico, and I work with creating magneto-optical materials.
I can go next. My name is Keon Jones. I'm a third-year dental student at Howard University in Washington, D.C. I'm from Baltimore, Maryland, and I went to Indiana University.
My name is Nikita Kozak. I'm a PhD student at Stanford University in the intersection of mechanical engineering and machine learning, and I went to Iowa State University.
Hello, I'm Kiana Johnson. I'm a first-year graduate student in the MSPH program at the University of North Texas Health Science Center in Fort Worth.
Hi, I'm Christina de Jesus Villanueva, and I am a PhD candidate at the University of Rhode Island. So when I was in LSAMP, I was at the University of Puerto Rico, 2 different campuses.
Okay, so
hello.
Oh, go ahead.
My name is Martise. I'm from Valdosta State University. My major is environmental geosciences, and I'm a senior right now.
Do the other students want to introduce themselves as well? Mia, Mohammed?
I have a lot of background noise. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
I'm from St. Clair, undergrad. I'm studying physical therapy. My major is in biology.
Mohammed, are you going to? I saw you unmuted. Okay. Emily, would you like to introduce yourself? It's optional.
Yeah, hi, my name is Emily Barra. I'm a student at the Indiana University of South Bend, and I am a undergraduate student as well as a biochemistry major.
So I just want to make sure that we have time for questions and for networking. So our panel includes Keon, Nikita, Alexa should be joining us, Christina, Kiana, and Glorianne. And I'm sorry if I mispronounce any of your names. Please let me know. I don't want to incorrectly pronounce your names because that's rude. But I'm really just here to facilitate, but you guys can have an open conversation, network, ask any questions to our panel so that we have a good discussion. Does anyone have any questions? So we've got some graduate students, we've got some people that are headed into pre-med or medical industry. We've got kind of a variety of backgrounds. Does anyone have questions about how to get into that field or why they chose their fields?
How many of you guys that are in undergrad currently are interested in grad school or currently doing research?
I'm interested in grad school.
Same here.
Any
Yeah,
particular
I am too.
like field?
I want to do physical therapy. I was a personal trainer and I started to go back to school so that I could do physical therapy. I want to do something that's a little bit more stable, long term. So I don't really know exactly what path I'm going to go, but I know what I want to do.
Anybody else as far as like biology, chemistry, engineering?
Currently I'm in the geosciences field, but I want to pursue the like the environmental field more.
And then where are you guys at as far as sophomore, juniors? Are you guys looking at applying to programs currently, or?
I'm a sophomore.
I'm a senior. I'm looking to apply at a couple of schools, like a Columbus State University or the University of Florida, or even a Florida State University.
I also suggest Oregon State University for environmental policy because they have a good policy program there, just so you know.
Yeah, I guess so. Do you guys have any other, like, do you guys have any questions as far as what programs are looking for? What makes it, like, really when you look for a grad school, you want to find a place that fits for you and a place that's gonna, like vice versa. I mean, yeah, feel free to ask whatever.
As far as pathways, I've been trying to figure out what would be the best pathway. I was looking into Kettering Hospital. Thought maybe that would be a good way to get into it, but I also like Dayton University. Not from Ohio, so I don't know much about the schools here and which would be the best path and the quickest path. Since I'm an adult student, I want to go as fast as I can. So any suggestions?
One way you could do is going to like a dual program, in which some dual programs allow you to do like both programs simultaneously. You'd have to go to the graduate student department, and because they don't like typically promote it. For example, mine is technically a dual program with the law school and the doctorate chemistry department because I want to be a patent lawyer. But so instead, you would have to go to their administration and ask them, and you would have to apply to also both programs as well. So you can ask for example, some universities that are connected to their hospitals, you can find a doctor who'd you be willing to like shadow, or someone in that research field to shadow them as well, and then they can vouch for you for your application in like a certain department. That would help you speed up that way, but you'd have to send like a few emails, which is kind of annoying.
Thank you.
So we also have someone who dropped a message in the chat named Giovanni, who is unable to attend the session, but is interested in networking and demonstrating his poster and his research. So he's attempting to network even when he can't attend the session. So maybe we should talk a little bit about the way to network, or how do you build these connections. Glorian talked a little bit about like sending out those emails, but how do you build and maintain your connections from undergrad through grad school and beyond.
I think the most important thing is show a little bit of effort and make the first initiative. A lot of people love talking about themselves, so go ahead and ask the person you're really interested in networking stuff about their lives. And I would always recommend that try to ask them personal questions outside of the scope of work just to get to know the person better. And that's how you really build a strong support network. And oftentimes, I guess, personally, I've kind of chased bigger names in my network, but like the title really doesn't matter. It's about the support you get. So just because someone is really recognized doesn't mean they'll be the best person for your network. And I've kind of learned that the hard way. So don't associate someone's title with what they can really provide you when you network.
I have something to add there. For anybody who might be searching for people to work with when you apply to a grad program, or I can only speak to grad programs. I'm sorry I didn't say that I'm a grad student in biology, and I'm supposed to be I have no idea how Rhode Island works. I'm about to graduate. I still don't get it because it's so different from Puerto Rico that my mind never wrapped around it, like the organizational structure, but somewhere around biological and environmental sciences, but also evolutionary rheology and marine science. I don't know how they put that all together in one place. But regardless of whatever it is I am under, when I went to search for a grad school, I actually was just searching for the advisors. And one way to cold open in an email is to, go on their Google Scholar profile if they have one, or go look for the literature they've published. And if you're too tired, just read the abstract and say whatever finding they had there and be like, I thought your results on this was really interesting and I want to work in that field. Can we have a chat about it? Or if you don't want to waste your time with chatting, I would just straight out ask, are you looking for grad students for whatever semester you're hoping to get into grad school? Because I don't feel they're probably going to be super busy, and having a long chat, if your end goal is to work with them and not saying up front, I just want to work with you, do you have space, is nice. They might remember you, but I feel like they probably wouldn't. So I'm just saying, I'm going off what Nikita said about people liking to talk about themselves. That gives them an avenue to know that you actually did a little homework, but also they can just start to talk about how awesome their own work is. So that's a really good cold emailing strategy, I think. Does anybody have any other strategies when they have to talk to somebody randomly? Just out of the blue.
I definitely agree with that. Like you guys both said, people love to talk about themselves, and faculty definitely love to talk about their own research. That's like an easy go-to. I personally, when I was in undergrad, there's a lot of the different grad schools will hold visitation programs, graduate visitation programs. Those are great opportunities to network. And then conferences like these, presenting your research and having people judge you, having like faculty and graduate students judge you, really just opened a lot of doors for me. And I still keep in touch with people through LSAMP and friends that I've met through some of these conferences. Right, unfortunately now due to COVID, we're here virtually, but even still, it's great opportunities.
I'll just add that one thing that I did for the school that I really wanted to go to was go to an open house that they had virtually, where you're able to talk to different faculty members, get to know about the different research that they're doing if you're going that direction. And they sometimes if they have like a breakout section, which they usually do, where you're able to talk to different faculty members, just for them to be able to put a face to the name if you've already emailed them helps a lot too, because I went to an open house, and then when I got to my interview process for a graduate school, one of the faculty members actually remembered me from the open house. So even though like you're networking with them, they probably talk to 50 million people. So 9 times out of 10, they might not remember you. So being able to put a face to a name and then emailing them, just make sure you're staying in their head so that they know who you are if you really want to go there.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to email more than once. Maybe even
I agree. Be bold.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing I would suggest, if like you're looking into professors or like advisors or like PIs, however you want to reference them, one thing, it's really important to understand what type of funding they have for, especially as a graduate student in research. Like you, for example, your first and second year, you might be a teaching assistant unless you have like the GRFB, which is like a fellowship or like an in-school fellowship. Like University of Iowa has like GAN fellowship that can help students as well. But if you don't have that, that means you would have to teach. And depending on your PI's funding, could indicate whether you're going to have to teach your third, fourth, fifth year. And that can actually take an extreme amount of time inside your own research. So I'd suggest looking up how much funding they have, which is actually public knowledge because it's based off of the United States taxes, most of it, especially like the NSF and most of their grants. So looking up into like how much money they have and asking the students themselves, if you can find out who are the students inside that research group, to say, oh, by what year do you think you're like going to graduate? Like how many years or semesters did you actually have to like teach? So that, you know, like, as you mentioned, like some students aren't like traditional students. So if you want to shorten your time, you might not want to teach too.
I agree with that. Maybe someone else in graduate school now can speak to that. But as in terms of funding, that's like a huge thing to look out for, because it can deter, like the more funding you have, the more research you can do, the quicker you can publish and graduate. And also in terms of graduate programs, when you're looking for different schools of interest, yes, you want to look for a particular PI and whatnot, but if you find a school that there's only one person of interest that you really like, that's like, there's no guarantee that you're going to be matched with that faculty. So I guess keep your options open and try and find an overall school that you really like.
Also, just to make a note on the funding, certain like schools have different requirements for PhD students, such as like Brown University requires all their PhD students to be fully funded. So if you get into Brown, then you don't have to worry about funding, or similar stories at like Stanford. And just to make a note about like finding your PI, since that kind of came up, certain programs also allow you to do like research rotations where you might come in with like one advisor in mind, but a lot of times that kind of changes in your first year. So don't be super content on working with one person, because you never know what really happens, and don't put all your marbles in one basket, basically.
So I think one of the things that kind of came up a little bit is how to maintain and build this network in kind of the COVID times. Like a lot of you talked about going to different physical events. How do you continue to do that when everything is virtual like this?
I think that's a really good.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, a lot of like programs, for example, a lot of fellowships have like mixers going on, and as someone like interested in a certain type of fellowship, you can sometimes reach out and get involved, and that's a really good way to like start to communicate with new people and actually network. And it doesn't only correspond to like fellowships, it also corresponds to like organizations. A lot of people put emphasis on outreach and awareness. So trying to figure out what like community events they have. And through those, you can find people you would want to network with.
I personally, because I've been reaching out to some programs and over the past year, like ever since COVID hit, it's hard. A lot of programs, different protocols aren't doing anything due to COVID, but along with the emailing thing, now I'm just constantly following up. It just shows initiative. So even if you never meet these people in person, they'll eventually know your name because you're constantly checking in like, hey, are you guys doing in person yet? Can I come visit? And just keep asking and following up with them. But there are programs out there that are doing in-person things. It's just hard to find.
Any other thoughts or suggestions?
One of my undergraduates has like their Zoom link at the bottom of like their signature, and they're like, hey, if you ever want to set up a time with me, here's my Zoom link. Just tell me when you're free. And that's very, very blunt and very direct, just because she also has like her password on the bottom of it. So I probably wouldn't do that because then all my undergraduate students would come up to me. But that is something that you can do and say, here's just a link and a follow-up, just so that, you know, I already have the Zoom link available ready for you. So that's something like convenient for them.
Yeah, no, definitely don't put your password of anything anywhere. That's a little bit on the much side. But, you know, I have to say that also with these virtual conferences, I've attended a few during all of this virtual times, and I found that LinkedIn is actually gotten even more used. Like people interact there more post conference, because you can, what I like about it is that you can quickly, if you're, you know, happy to have met somebody or think that it could be something useful for you to keep that connection up in the future, you can add them on LinkedIn clearly, but you can also just send them a chat message while a conference is going on or after the conference, or just something to do with the conference. Like, oh, we met at this conference virtually. I really, you know, wanted to connect with you just to like add you to my network. It sounds really creepy, like Facebooky creepy, but I mean, we're in a chat right now that's called networking. So I think we kind of all know, or a lot of us know what we mean by, hey, you just want to add you to my LinkedIn network. Nice to meet you. And then if you randomly want to talk to them 2 years later, at least it's in the history. And you're not just cold messaging. But again, like cold messaging isn't the worst thing you can do in the world. I think at some point when you are in science or a discipline where you expose yourself a lot, be it through conferences or just person to person, or if you're a faculty person, you start to expect that people are just going to randomly message you. I've been randomly messaged and I respond, and I'm just like, hey, yeah, that's what I do, blah, 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 and now we're friends, you know? So so if anybody else is feeling apprehensive about messaging somebody randomly 2 years after this conference, I hope that this monologue I just went on helps you feel confident to do so. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, Christina. LinkedIn is really huge, and I'll tell something that's secret to the other people on here is that a lot of time you'd be surprised at how you people actually reach back out. So whenever a presenter says, reach out, I want to stay connected, do it, because you might be the only one that does it, and you never know where that relationship's going to take you. They're going to remember you, and it's awesome.
Agreed.
So the students already used LinkedIn, right? You guys just popped in and just networked with all of these panelists, because that's what I would have done just now. Just like gone straight to LinkedIn and linked with all of these panelists, because these are all great resources for you down the line, right? So we may not have many students in here, but you should be using this resource and this time to really optimize your network. And you start getting like weird LinkedIn badges when you have like 500 connections. So start going for it. Yeah.
I'm gonna get competitive now. Let me see who I can connect with.
Treat it like a game you can win and can win you money. I mean, networks are how you get jobs, and how you get jobs and is how you make money, right? So you get that network and you find that perfect job that is where the bank is. So I think that's a really good way to see LinkedIn. I'm just moderating, but I wanted to hop in there on that. So sorry, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was just going to add and say that you go in and jump in anytime. I know you have a lot of valuable stuff to say. And that's pretty much all I was going to say.
So what are other tips for how you guys got to where you are? So it sounded like most of you are in grad school. How far is anyone from graduating grad school? Can I get a show of numbers? 1 year, 3 years, 1 year, 5 years. Oh, you just started. 1 year. Okay. So how did you get to where you are? And for those of you that are a year from graduating, what are you doing to start building your network for the job world?
Sorry, go ahead. I haven't muted my mic, so just saying.
No,
Don't pay
you're fine,
attention
you're
with reaction noises.
So I'm a third year dental student, and I actually have just started reaching out to residency programs and whatnot because a friend of mine had like brought it up. He's like, oh, like you'll be applying soon. And it's really all about networking. So I'm like reaching out to all these previous professors and dentists that I've worked with. And one of who is like in charge of diversity and inclusion for LSAMP. I'm not sure if she's still with us, but I keep in contact with a lot of these people, just updates like, hey, how are you doing? School's going well, blah, blah, blah. And see how they're doing and if they know anybody who they're willing to introduce you to. Other than that, it's especially right now with virtual, it's like everything's email. So, but I would never be afraid to just reach out and ask. You never know.
Well, I'm gonna add something here. So I've been obsessive about building a network for years, like years upon years. I want to be in the conservation, biology and science and management world. And I read at some point that it was super difficult because you had to work for free after you graduated and etc. And I was like, no, I can't. That's not going to happen. And if it does happen, it might happen, but it's not happening now because moving around and meeting people, I've been really focused right here in Puerto Rico with the different nonprofit and governmental organizations that work with anything to do with natural resource management and conservation. And I'm currently an intern for the U.S. Forest Service through a program called Resource Assistance, like Natural Resource Assistance Program. And I think Martis could probably really benefit from that program based on what he mentioned was his area of interest, because actually they have media officers and human resource interns, so probably anybody. Actually, I take it back. And a lot of the internship programs that have to do with the federal government in any way, they've gone virtual, and people have gotten jobs even though they did their internship virtually, because after you complete 1 year, you get a special hiring authority that allows you to get hired without competing. And I don't know if any of you know anything about trying to apply to a job through USA Jobs, but it's a nightmare, and not competing and not having to fill in that application is probably the best part of the internship. We'll see when I'm done. But I have a colleague who did get a job that way right away after finishing her internship. So I think that not only through the Forest Service or through governmental agencies, there's a lot of internship opportunities, paid internship opportunities that have gone virtual. And Googling that is probably your best bet on how to find one in your interest field, in your field of interest, sorry. So yeah, I just wanted to add that as my 2 cents, my experience to where I am now. And I forgot why I started saying that, but it seemed relevant when I thought of it, so. Yeah, and if anybody wants to know more about that program, or if you want to, it's for grad students and undergrads, and actually I think even high school students, depending on the type of job being offered. So yeah, my LinkedIn is in my profile. Or I can just put it in the chat. Here you go.
I would just like to say that for somebody that's very introverted and hates having to talk to new people, networking is very hard for me. So just like a little background for me, I actually got my bachelor's degree in chemistry. So public health is far away from that. But how I got into it is actually talking to a graduate student that I was working with in the lab and telling her that I like the lab, but I don't think I want to go into a PhD as far as like biochemistry or something like that. And she's the one that told me like, well, have you thought about epidemiology? And I was like, not really, but I knew it was a lot of like population, a lot of calculating and things like that. So I was like, why not look into that? So by expressing to her like what I wanted to do or what I didn't want to do, she was able to connect me to something that now I think I like doing. And even now, the advisor that I work with, by telling her that I wasn't really sure exactly what area I wanted to stick as far as research, she was able to get me in contact with somebody that has their PhD in epidemiology, and how she works with a hospital doing their health disparities research. And I was like, I didn't even know I was able to go into something like that. And so by expressing to her that I had no idea what I wanted to do, she was able to put me in contact with somebody. So I would say just expressing to people like your wants or things that you don't know, you're still trying to figure out, they might be able to put you in contact with somebody, because I'm the person that I don't even want to email somebody because I don't want to bother them. So just that one person that you're comfortable talking to, it can be a big difference.
I feel as if also you should like be talking to like your family members about like your research, because it kind of gives you more of a relationship with them. Because sometimes when you talk to someone about your field, if you are able to explain it to like a family member or your parents, then you're able to explain it to anyone in any different type of field, and just able to promote yourself in a way that not just someone in your department can understand you, can also allow you to apply for like different fellowships and different applications. For example, because I'm trying to get my PhD in chemistry. However, I have to talk to physicists, I have to talk to material engineers, I have to talk to different physicists, optics, material science, and all of those solely because, and most of the time I don't even interact with chemists because I'm in like a completely different building than the chemistry building, because they're like, lasers, what on earth are you doing? So being able to like explain your research of like, even if it's your undergraduate research, or even finding a PI or your advisor and say, hey, can I get a research opportunity over the summer? Or can I try to do this? Because then you'll actually understand like what type of work you're doing, or like something that's in this field. And if it's interest to you, great. However, also when you join graduate school, if you don't like the research that you're doing, it's okay to change a group. And it's also okay to change the PI that you're with if you don't like that PI. Like you're not bound to one department or just one section of a research group. Because, for example, I initially was at the University of Iowa, but I did not want to be an analytical chemist. And so I even asked my former PI, I'm like, hi, can you write a recommendation letter for me for this current PI I would like to apply to? And just being very open of what your research is, and it's okay to change your research, and it's okay to change like your ideas on something, because many people in undergrad, they tell you, oh, you're a biologist, you have to do biology. Oh, you're a chemist, or oh, you're a physicist, this is the only thing you can do in industry. I have a friend who's a chemist and now she's getting her master's in psychology, like completely different, but you're able to apply all your skills. And when you're trying to do an application, don't so much focus on your major, focus on the things that you learned in your major, like your analytical skills, your writing skills, your ability to like time management, because those are like your soft skills, but your soft skills are what's going to allow yourself to be promoted into a job position that you're like, oh, this says maybe, for example, like an HR manager. I probably don't have any understanding of what an HR manager does, but I do know how to manage undergraduate students, and I do know how to manage a classroom, and I know how to set deadlines for myself. So being able to promote your knowledge and your experience and research into something applicable in a job is also important.
No, I really like what you said, Gloria, and as far as the skills, and I apologize, I just jumped on here, and I'm sure you guys introduced each other at the beginning. But I'm actually, I just gave a talk to some students at Iowa State, so I'm still here, just on a classroom. And we're talking about that because they were worried about not using their major, so to speak, and really just making sure that what you're doing is lined up with what your interests are, and making it your own is what is really powerful. Because I know my background's in chemical engineering, but in undergrad, I got to do a lot of biology research and work with cell culture and things like most engineers or chemical engineers definitely don't do. So it's really, you could have your major, but really follow your interests and let that guide you. So I really like that.
I just want to reiterate another component of what Glorianne says. Being able to translate your research, being able to tell people about it, being able to tell people, even if you're not in industry or in academia, if you go to industry, being able to talk about what you do to anyone is so valuable. It's where the money is. It's where the hiring opportunities are. It is such an invaluable skill. Practice it, practice it, practice it.
Yeah, I would agree with that too. I was also a biology major, and I started my research opportunities with an analytical chemist. And I loved the overall project, but the actual work, chemistry in general just wasn't for me. But I think when applying to graduate programs, it also helps to be open and as far as just learning as many techniques as you can. It's not so much about that particular research topic. And so promoting yourself in that way, and then also, like you were just saying, being able to translate, that's huge. Like from all of the presentations that I would give during the conferences back then, it's like, even now with patient care, it's like I'll sometimes slip and say something and they'll look at me like, huh, like what does that mean? And I'm like, oh yeah, not common knowledge. Like so that's huge. And then of course, with money wise, when you're writing for grants and things, you want it to be clear as day what you're trying to get to. Because not everyone, people who are going to be approving that funding may not necessarily be in your field. So.
I don't have any additional topics, so I welcome questions or topics from you all, from the students and from the panelists, to talk about so it sounds like several of you started at one undergraduate institution and moved pretty far away, maybe developing that network with people that you've never met before and maybe don't meet until you're starting your new job.
Everybody's out of ideas.
So for my network, oh, Christina, do you have something?
No, I was just gonna say, I think for moving somewhere else, that part of the question, I think just really choosing a hobby that isn't your science necessarily is both healthy for you to like get your brain in a space where it's not just stress or just science all the time. I mean, or whatever your field is. I like my field. That doesn't mean I want to eat, breathe, and sleep biology all the time. So for me, just going to the new place and trying out the hobbies that are there is good. Like, for example, cornhole. Never heard of it. Never saw it. No, it doesn't exist. And I went there, everybody's playing cornhole. I was like, what is this? Why are people throwing, what is it? You know, so it's silly, but it gets you playing a game with people, gets you talking, and then you like go get invited or suggest a different thing that you like doing. And I really like baking and cooking, and usually that's a good way to make friends because you're the person with the food. But if you're not the person with the food, maybe you could be the person with cornhole. I have no idea. Whatever they play over there, or I did yoga, you know, just be a person. This is good advice. Okay, that's what I did. I made some friends.
I think that's a really good point, that we talk about networking only in the context of jobs and in moving forward, but your network is also your social network, like not like social media, but the people that you're interacting with it on a daily basis, your lab mates, your coworkers, your colleagues, and also just your friends and moving to a new place and making new friends. So how have you guys kind of dealt with that aspect, the social network side of it?
So first off, I'll say, Christina, I love playing cornhole. I don't know, that's because my family moved to Nebraska and it's like the world headquarters for cornhole. I think it's called Nebraska Cornhole, whatever it is. But I think for me, it's how you said, just those different hobbies. So like, so I'm not in grad school, I'm in industry, and I've lived in a few different places because of that. So specifically, when I lived in Albuquerque, New Mexico, which I think that's where Gloriana is right now, I got involved with kickball, which you think kickball, that's like for like elementary school kids. What are you doing playing kickball? Well, that's an adult league where you can play kickball. They also have a volleyball league. So it was that community aspect of it. And so I got to also relive my youth, made a lot of friends pretty quickly there doing that outside of work. Actually, there's some people I worked at told me about it, but then their team was already full. So I jumped right in, joined a new team, just had fun playing kickball.
I would also say that like hobbies are a really good thing to have in terms of grad school, like especially if like with research, you're going to be hitting so many roadblocks. It eventually weighs on you. So being able to de-stress is huge. But in terms of social life, That's a good point. Like networking there is huge. I keep in touch with a lot of my friends who I met through conferences as well, medical students, graduate students, and recently I've been able to like travel to Alaska and Vegas, Mexico, and just catch up. And they're not necessarily in my fields, but we just clicked. So yeah.
Also, if you go into lab, like you might get tired of your lab mates, like sometimes you have like the student that you're the mentee and they're the mentor, and then you ask them for so much advice, asking them so many questions, they might get tired of you for a little bit. We're going to be honest, because they also have to work on their research as well. So understanding like the interaction of like how much time you take of others is important when you have that mentor relationship. And also sometimes you have some issues inside lab, and sometimes you just want to vent to someone, but venting to someone into like inside your lab group is kind of odd because you never know if they're going to tell the next person. So just like going to another friend that's probably in a different research group and say, hey, I struggle with this. Can you tell me what you did? And like they do like the same experiences. Like you're not all probably going to be collaborative every single day, but knowing how to respect people's boundaries, respecting people's spaces, and ensuring that like it's a safe space for everyone is important, and like it's an important like work environment. Because some like I got lucky in my research is like none of my research overlaps with anyone else's, but I do know a few friends who are doing synthesis who are trying to find the exact same compound and trying to do the exact same research, and whoever gets to it first gets the paper. So that could be like very competitive and very intense. So understanding like who to ask for help and like when to go to that help for person, or like knowing their emotions can help you like be a little bit more relaxed in your research group too. And being able to like go to people who are in the graduate program but not in your department can like help you understand like the different ways like people are getting paid and the different types of navigations they had to deal with. Because for example, I'm part of the union at my university, and we're realizing that so many people in the arts and the humanities have to have like 2 jobs, in which in comparison to the STEM field, you just have to be the teaching assistant. So you understand like the different types of like disparities in like the different STEM and non-STEM fields, which allows you to like talk about stuff other than like your research or what's going on in like your department solely. And you get to be closer to the community. I'm part of also kickball, and we're part of a kickball, but it's actually UNM graduate students against the UNM police officers at the department. So we always play, and we talked about police brutality, Black Lives Matter, and like other different associations and like how it has affected on campus. And now we have like a student association that discusses about UNM policies and how like it reflects it in the Albuquerque community. So you never know. You can maybe be an advocate for something. You don't have to be, because that's also a lot of work.
Yes, I'm muted, but I wanted to add something about what Glorianne said, and that about people having overlapping projects and whoever gets the paper first. That is toxic lab behavior, because an advisor should not be assigning the same project or allow it in that sense. Like you can collaborate and be, but if it's for your thesis, it should be yours. You should be the first author. If it gets published, it shouldn't be that way. And we didn't talk about, that because this is a networking session, not about like, those red flags with advisors. But there are red flags with advisors, and that one for me would be like an antenna. If somebody said that to me and I'm just chatting with the grad students, like trying to evaluate if I want to join that lab, for me that would be like a big no, because it's unnecessary. Science is infinite. We have so many things to find out in this world. Why would you do that? It's usually for their own gain. So it moves faster, but big red flag. If the undergrads is still there, yeah, like that for me, just, I don't know about you guys, but red flag, just saying. And I'm glad there's so much kickball going on. That's amazing.
I do want to mention that communication within your lab is going to be really important to keeping some of these red flags at bay, and also keeping other people from taking advantage of you, which is something that I experienced as a graduate student, that other lab members were using my skill set to their advantage, and it was detrimental to me. So being aware and communicating, if you're not doing it, then someone's still doing it who is doing it. So being that person to bring up the issues, to communicate, to try to make better these relationships allows you to prolong your network. But sometimes you have to also make a decision not to pursue that network. If it's not a healthy relationship, if it's not a healthy dynamic, even in a work relationship, then it's not a network that you should pursue. So I think we just have a few more minutes to talk about some issues and potential advantages or methods of networking. So if you guys have additional topics or questions, now's the time.
When doing about your CV and your resume and like how you're going through the application process, don't solely focus on your professors. You can also go and, like, if you've worked somewhere for many years, like for 2 or 3 years at Starbucks or something, or like you had previous work in like a different field, not even in your university, use that recommendation letter, because there's going to be so many other students who use solely their professors or solely their research advisors. And being able to apply someone that like has helped you in your grant research, or someone that's helped you in your other job, like when you were babysitting for like your professor or something, like having that one on a different like subject matter can help you show that you're a broad person and you're not solely focused on this research as well. For example, I had my boss I was a legal education coordinator in Newark, New Jersey, and my boss was a lawyer. And the way I was able to get into the dual program was because he recommended me, and he's like, yeah, she knows constitutional law very well. But I wouldn't have been able to do that if I solely used my network for my professors. So that can also help you navigate it.
When also talking about like CVs and resumes, a really important thing is to have like a failure resume. It's really preached here on campus, just because a lot of people are like focused on success. But if you can talk about your failures, that really grabs people's attention, and that's where you learn the most about yourself and how you overcome like hurdles. So like something we do here is we develop a failure resume, and we always have that ready to talk about. So yeah.
Never heard of a failure resume. That's an interesting take. I was having a conversation with other postdocs just this week about whether or not we should include grants on our CV that weren't awarded. Like if you wrote all that, you spent 20 pages on it, and then it wasn't awarded, do you include that on your CV? But a failure resume would be a perfect place to put it.
Yeah, you should check out Tina Sealing. She's the department head of the design school here at Stanford, as well as like the Knight Hennessy Scholar Program. And that's her big thing. She loves failure resumes, and it's a super powerful tool when you talk to like, I guess like all the interviews here were not about the successes. They read about those. So they kind of questioned you about your failures, and a lot of people weren't really prepared to talk about those. And it's just like a really good thing to have.
That's crazy. Yeah, I feel like everyone who goes to interviews, they like get stumped on the, oh, tell me about your weaknesses question. So, and you always try and flip it and whatnot. But to have a whole failure resume, that's a cool concept.
Does anyone have any other tips or tricks for CVs or resumes that they So my favorite tip for my CV is the first thing that you see on my CV other than my name is a highlight section. So it has the number of publications I have, the number of presentations, the total grant amount, so that everything that is in that 6 or 7 pages is in like 5 bullet points. And I think that that's a really good tool to like condense your entire resume or CV into a little tiny point.
Also revision. Like I'm not the greatest writer at all. Like I can admit I fail at that consistently. So having someone else read your resume, your proposal, like anything, like it just, if you're gonna have your recommendation from like your professors, like ask them to read them, like what you're sending to them, because they've had so much more experience than you have. Like just say, hi, can you just gloss over this? And it helps a lot. I also use Grammarly because I suck at grammar. So that's a plus.
Yeah, I would also say just to work on it constantly. So I'm more familiar with resumes than CVs just from being on the industry side of thing. So I try at least once a month to go through and update my resume, whether it's new things or refine things. Because I think it's a lot easier if you do it constantly than if you wait like a year or two and you're just struggling to remember all the stuff you've done. And I also have like this a really long resume, almost like a CV of I keep track of everything. And so if I have specific things or that may not fit, they might not fit in a 1.5 to 2 page resume, I can pull from something like a running list of resume I have for a position I'm applying for. So that's something I do that's helped.
So we're running low on time. We got less than 60 seconds. Anybody have like 1 second important networking things that they haven't mentioned yet?
Just relax. People who want you will actually reach out to you as well.
I would say just do it. Once you do it, break the ice. It's out there, and it just happens. And usually, people want to talk more than you realize. They're just waiting for someone to talk first.
I think also that you're not bothering anybody. Just talk to them.
I'd also say dream big about your network and who your mentors can be. I had some really exceptional people become my mentors and people I would never think I would ever have that opportunity to speak to. So just reach out.
Okay, well, that's our time. Thank you so much to our panelists and for the student participation that we had. I really appreciate all of your time and these super great tips. The panel is recorded and will be available until Wednesday. So thank you all.
Bye, everybody.